Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan live, and the topic's a bit tasty. First interviewed by the newly appointed chair of the Reform Party, Dr. David Bull, and joining me again is Basil, who was on, was it Sunday night, Basil, you came on?
I think it was, yeah, I think it was Sunday night, yeah.
Yeah, and seemed to go quite well. Basil enjoyed it, the group seemed to enjoy it, so Basil's back on, and for those of you who don't know, this is Basil. He does a lot of X-Space hosting, and as you can see, he's got almost 100,000 followers on Twitter, talking mostly about politics. He's got his own podcast, It's Only Politics, which you can get on Spotify. I do apologise, Basil, I hadn't entered them into the description, but I'll add them once the live's finished, so anybody watching the recording, they want to follow your political podcast, or indeed follow you on Twitter, they can do that. So, Basil, you phoned me and told me this blockbuster news, so I'll let you start with to tell what's happened in Twitter world today and in mainstream media.
Yeah, so Reform UK, obviously, we were talking about this on Sunday, right? They've had a bit of a trouble with their chair, Zia Youssef. He resigned and he left, and then 2 days later he came back, and they said it was all okay, but they needed a new chair, and we'll get into the reasons why that happened later. But basically, they've announced today that Dr. David Bull from Talk TV and other shows you might have seen him on, he worked for the BBC for a number of years, went on The Right Stuff and Richard and Judy, all these other shows he did. And he did actually do Most Haunted on Living TV for a while as well. That's what he's popular for. He just decided to name him as the new chairman. And immediately, it's been something of a car crash. So he went up on stage. He said, "Thank you, Nigel." He accepted everything. And then he went off and did an interview with ITV. And I believe we have a clip.
Yep, got the clip. You were good enough to send that over to me. So we'll start off with that, and we'll just let people hear the words coming out of his mouth, and then we'll have a wee chat about it and look at some other things that have drawn the attention of you and others on Twitter land.
Come to this country, you have to adopt our culture, our systems, our values, and covering your face is a barrier to communication. And I mean that whether it's the burqa or whether it's actually scarves, Antifa scarves, which are being put around your face, or crash helmets, or whatever it is, because that is not the way to communicate. We need to rebuild communities, and you do that by talking to people.
That's a matter.
I just
missed the start off there.
Did I miss the start?
Are there any other items of clothing that you think are a threat to public safety?
So I think that the key for me about this is it's about integrating into this country. Immigration is the lifeblood of this country. It always has been. But also, if you come to this country, you have to adopt our culture, our systems, our values. And covering your face is a barrier to communication. And I mean that whether it's the burqa or whether it's actually scarves, Antifa scarves, which are being put around your face, or crash helmets, or whatever it is, because that is not the way to communicate. We need to rebuild communities, and you do that by talking to people.
That's a matter.
Horrific.
What's your initial thoughts on that, Basil?
Horrific. I mean, listen, I'll not beat around the bush. I've been quite disappointed in Reform. I expected big things from them, and I hoped that they were going to be something that would unite the politically homeless people in this country who wanted immigration to stop altogether. We actually want the population to come down. We want many of the migrants who've came here over the years to leave. And I've been bitterly disappointed for a number of reasons, and today is just another one, saying that immigration is the lifeblood of this country. It always has been. First off, that's a lie, right? It's not true, right? Immigration is not the lifeblood of this country, right? The honest, hard-working people up and down this country, that's the lifeblood, right? Not immigration. And also to say it always has been. This is that standard left-wing myth that the BBC and the Labour Party push and have done for decades now, saying that for some reason, British people, we aren't worthy of our own home. We need immigrants to try and sort this thing out. It's nonsense. It's never been that way. Since 1997, 28 years ago, is that now? Things have changed, admittedly, and we've opened the doors, and it's been nothing but a disaster. But before that, we plodded along. We had, we've had highs, we've had lows as a country. But regardless, we didn't need mass uncontrolled immigration. And this myth that gets peddled by these people it's horrendous enough as it is. It's been taught in our schools. It's been taught to our kids. It's been put out on the airwaves constantly. And the last thing we need is the Reform Party peddling it as well. I'm incredibly disappointed today.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, was there not a poll recently where they asked Reform members or voters their views on immigration, and it was like, it was either 100% or 99.9%, were strongly believed in it. And that's where I kind of feel sorry for. I'm fed up, like, moaning about Reform, right? It's like every week, sometimes even twice weekly, it's like a soap opera, there's just more madness coming about. And I kind of feel sorry for those who still see the faith and the belief in Reform as a party. And it's the perception and the reality of the party is two separate things. So, it's a comment that will be alien to those who are out there supporting them. And I feel really sorry for people with that. It's a bad state. Yet the maddest thing is, they're probably still at the three parties that could potentially win an election, possibly just two today, because I don't think the Tories would be anywhere near it one if we had an election today. But they might sort of gig out, between now and the next election. But they're probably the least worst as well, which is bonkers, isn't it? Because there's sort of misinterpretation constantly. There's lies about, we're making it democratic, but you look at the constitution and they're far from it. We're promised what we'll tell you we're up to a new policy on deportations, and that doesn't happen. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's just, they're becoming a pantomime. And to pick a new chair, it's not only about this, you tweeted earlier on today, and we'll cover that in a minute or two. It's not just this first car crash of an interview that he's gave. There's lots behind it, and you think, well, why would you pick that guy? Why would you pick that guy to chair this party where the vast majority of people that support them have totally different views?
Mm-hmm.
Am I crazy?
Well, no, the thing for me is, right, is I get accused a lot of being harsh on Reform, right? The truth is I'm harsh on all the parties, right? I don't like anybody who is trying to basically, I think, make this country a worse place, right? And I'm obviously on the side that believes that immigration has been terrible for this country over the last 28 years, mass immigration I'm talking about. But I'll tell you what really disappoints me, right, is that I'm not being overly critical on Reform, right? Reform, if he got asked about, say, the economy or tax or something, he didn't quite get it right, and he said something that wasn't party policy, I go, so what? No one cares about this. But this is Reform UK, right? They are supposed to, this is their bread and butter, right? He's the chair. He should know this stuff inside and out. And he's just been appointed, and he's just been asked a question that had nothing to do with immigration. Didn't even have to bring it up. It was about the burqa ban. That's what he was getting asked about. And you know what? Great answer. He said, I would ban the burqa. But then he responded for no reason whatsoever, and said, but immigration is the lifeblood of this country. It always has been. And again, it annoys me because these are left-wing, liberal talking points that have been put out there for decades. They've helped destroy this country. They've helped fan the flames of our youth believing a lot of this nonsense because they get taught it in their schools and all the rest of it. And now we've got a Reform UK chairman peddling it as well. What you should have done is turn around and said, actually, do you know what? I hate the fact that people say things like that. And I believe that the lifeblood of this country is the working class, working hard, people of this country, up and down and all the way from the top of Scotland to the south of England, that keep this place going, and nothing. Just back to immigration. And as you see from his other tweets he's put out, I mean, just terrible.
Yeah, I mean, as I say often, I use this badly worn passport as a prop often when I'm about to do rallies, etc. And the government, the people who have one of these or who are eligible for one of these should be their priority, first and foremost. That's it. Yeah? I mean, that's not to say you don't look after other people, but they've got to be your priority. And Reform are seen by many as the party that will look after these people first and foremost. However, it's just every other week you're just going, you actually don't. And the problem we've got is if you've got hope, then that can sometimes keep you sensible. But when you lose that hope, that's kind of when we have problems in the country and people start, doing things that they maybe shouldn't do. And that's kind of, if everybody, I've went through a journey. You know, I was a fan of Reform. I was contemplating joining Reform and asking if I could potentially be a candidate for them. You know that. We spoke about it privately and public back a year ago. So I went the full journey, but I found something else to cling on to, hoping that was, you know, the SDP and getting me in under their banner and for the Hollywood elections. But, you know, for folk that are just like go to vote and just like don't know where to put it, I genuinely feel sorry for them. But anyway, you know, that wasn't all that's happened today with this guy. When it was announced, you took to Twitter and you done a thread. So I'm going to bring that up. So that's your thread. Now I'm going to not be able to see what you're talking about now because I'm going to be flicking over to Twitter to scroll through this. So if anything goes wrong with the stream, just give me a shout. So your first tweet in this thread that you put out is 9-year-old should be taught what it means to be LGBT. Well, what's going on there?
Right. Can I just address something before we start that, right? I've just seen a comment from Debbie Burgess, right, saying he's all over the internet smearing Reform. He comes on here to smear again and can't even show his face. What a coward, right? Okay. In terms of showing my face, listen, I don't show my face because I've got a family and a job to protect, right? And I believe that anonymity is my right as much as anybody else's, right? So I'll never criticize people for not showing their face, and I don't expect criticism in return. But if you want to, that's up to you, right? But the truth of the matter is, saying I smear Reform, right? If you look up what the definition of smear is damage the reputation of someone by false accusations, right? I haven't falsely accused Reform of anything. I am putting out videos of what their chair has said on TV. I'm putting out tweets that their chair has tweeted. Debbie, the thing is, right, if you judge the Labour Party or the SNP or whichever party you don't like, and you turn around and say, well, I don't like them and I'll judge them accordingly. Look, I just do it one more party and say Reform should be judged equally as well. And the truth of the matter is, if you believe that Reform needs to be the next government of this country, right, which, by the way, if there was an election tomorrow, I would probably have to vote Reform as well, because they would be the least worst option, which is what I've voted in the past, the least worst option. But the truth of the matter is, if you want Reform to run this country and win an election and actually be good at governing, then you have to criticise them. You have to. You can't just let people get away with things and say whatever they want and then turn around later and go, I wonder why it all went wrong. The point is, if you didn't like Zia Youssef in the party, maybe she didn't, I don't know, but it's because of the criticism of him that he got removed from that role in the first place. And if this chair's came in and he's pro-immigration, then really what is he doing in Reform? Is that the Reform you want? It's just a question I would ask. So please don't blame me for smearing Reform. And I promise you, by the way, if it wasn't me posting this stuff, other people would too. All I do is highlight this is the party and they've got some problems and I would like them to sort them out. Anyway, the thread I put up, right? So new Reform chair, yeah, he posted back in 2018. I just went through and had a look at some of the things he's posted in the past. Because what happens in politics, and you saw this recently with the Brexit guy, what was his name again? There was a Reform guy. He just joined Reform, and for ages he's been doing the anti-Brexit campaign. He's a massive Remainer. It'll come back to me. But again, a lot of people are getting on the Reform bandwagon because they're sat there thinking, oh, this is a chance to get into government. This is a chance to get to the top table and all the rest of it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's find out what they used to think before Reform came knocking. Now, the problem with this one that I've got is 9-year-olds should be taught what it means to be LGBT. If you look at the article there and you look at the timeline, you'll remember this is back when there was that big debate over should kids be taught lesbian and gay sexual education in school, transgenderism as well, which was a big thing at the time. Should they be taught this stuff? And he supported it. And if you scroll down, Craig, you'll see, I didn't just put this one tweet. If it was one tweet, I probably would have left it. But if you scroll down, Craig, you'll see there's loads of tweets just like this. So here we go. We need Twitter to silence LGBT hate. Homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia have no place online. Now, my problem with that is, if you look at that, saying we need Twitter to silence the LGBT hate, right? The transphobia thing, right? Again, if you remember at the time, so many people were coming out and saying this trans thing is a cult, it's a problem, all the rest of it. And sure enough, he's turned around and said, we need to silence those people. So if you're on the side like I am, that think that women should have rights to their own safe spaces and the rest of it, they were fighting against this stuff. And they were getting silenced by the old Twitter regime before Elon Musk took over. And Dr. David Bull was on the side of silencing people. That to me is a problem. That was on the wrong side of that argument. And if he got his way, we would never have gotten those things changed. So yeah, I mean, if you carry on, you'll see he was at an armed forces ball again, an LGBT.
What's that about? LGBT armed forces ball.
Look again. Notice the LGBT. It's the T I have the issue with, right? LGB, it's fine by me, but the truth is the T thing I have an issue with. And these groups invite people along because they peddle the propaganda. And if you keep going down, you will see he tweets Pink News out and Stonewall, all these companies that were the problem, that were invested in trying to get kids to believe in this nonsense in the first place. Well said. I am proud to have played a role in this. David Cameron will leave behind a proud legacy on LGBT rights. David Cameron was the one who brought in the Equality Act that removed women's rights to safe spaces in the first place. Total idiot. Inclusive sexual education is important and must be compulsory. Citing Pink News, the LGBT Pink News. So again, I've got problems with this. We need Twitter to silence LGBT hate, homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. We already spoke about that one. Yeah, terrible. Again, why would you want to be on the side of silencing people who call out the trans cult? I have no idea. Out and Proud group will make an LGBT case for leaving the EU. I mean, that's just woke nonsense. But again, he tweets.
How do you get to a case for leaving the EU from LGBT rights? I'm kind of lost.
It's rubbish, but this was the cult that developed at the time. You know, and this is why you've got pride flags everywhere and pride progress flags and trans flags and all the rest of it. It's all part of this group. And he's the one who's been promoting them. British Prime Minister Theresa May says being trans is not an illness, right? Now, if you go and look at that Pink News article, what you will find is they talk about the fact that some people would say trans people have a mental health issue. I would actually argue that that is the case. And I think the studies have borne that out, right? But the truth of the matter is he was peddling that it's not, that this is just the way people are born, right? Like what Lady Gaga does. And again, this kid's lives have been ruined over this stuff. He is so wrong on this, you know.
This was the one that caught my attention. Retweeted The Economist on refugees. Germany's chancellor is brave, decisive, and right. Now, that was back in 2015, and you're far more politically aware 10 years ago than I was. My political awareness is only a sort of relatively new thing. So, was that Merkel?
Yes. So, Angela Merkel let in 1 million Syrian migrants. Look, I say quote unquote Syrian refugees, right? I'll tell you right now, they weren't all refugees and they certainly weren't all Syrian, right? And we know the refugee system in this country is screwed and Germany's ain't any better, right? Angela Merkel let in 1 million in the period of a few months, right? It was a real statement of intent from her. And even Angela Merkel turned around later and said, I regret doing that. I shouldn't have done it, right? Because if you go and look at what happened to the sexual assault statistics in Germany, they skyrocketed not long afterwards. I mean, there was even you might remember the New Year's Cologne attacks where over 1,000 women were attacked in one night. It was just madness. And this is what happens when you just say, oh, well, I want to be a good person. Let's let the third world come in here and the second world come in here and no vetting whatsoever. They're all good people, right? No, they're not all good people. And borders are important. And unfortunately, Dr. David Bull at the time thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, another one that caught me was this one here, which you would think, right? The first thing you would do when they start talking to you about possibly being the next chairman of a political party is have a wee look through your social media and see if you've flagged that political party. Well, he hasn't, as it turns out, but he's had a right pop here at Nigel Farage. How does that sit with you?
Well, look, I think this is more of an argument over standards and saying, well, maybe we should, clear up a few things first. It's just kind of like, look, when did Zia Youssef leave the party? Was it Friday? And then by today, they've got a new chair in place. And it just smacks of amateur hour always. It's almost like Nigel was down the pub and he was like, oh, go on then, David, I'll give the job to you. Then we'll announce it on Monday. It's just rubbish. And it just shouldn't be happening. Now, I mean, actually, the point itself, by the way, was an argument over Nigel didn't say HIV can only affect people of certain race or sex class. What he was saying is that people from abroad come here and they use health tourism to get their healthcare taken care of, right? You might remember that argument from back then. And that was the point he was making. He was saying, no, it can be anybody. Now, just remember, right? Even the NHS has specific regulations and things. Now, until recently, you couldn't obviously donate blood as a gay person. You can now. But they still maintain extra questioning and all the rest of it around gay people because of how much more prevalent that kind of disease is in that community, right? So for him to turn around as a doctor and say that it's just like, that's counteracting what the NHS do. Do you know what I mean? So it makes no sense to me. And again, fighting with Nigel over the comment, it goes to show that he obviously has a liberal past, right? And when I say past, we're talking 10 years ago. I mean, the guy he's middle-aged now, right? So he's 56. So we're not talking about, he was young and he was naive, right? He was 46 when he started writing this stuff, right? And what he has came from a background of this liberal elitist class who are all in the TV industry and all the rest of it. And what he's done is he's put out these virtue signals, this is how I make friends in the TV industry. I tell Nigel Farage he's an idiot and all the rest of it. And then slowly over time, one day, someone's had a word with him. He's went, I'm going to join Reform now. And all of a sudden, I'm a conservative again. And that worries me because I've spoke about this before. I think that in politics, what we've really suffered from in the United Kingdom is not just a lack of good policy, it's a lack of good people with morals and standards in politics, And
I've spoken about this a lot in your Twitter spaces. For those who are on Twitter and haven't been into these things, I would suggest you have a look at them. They're great forums. Yes, you get some absolute crackpots in them, and you get some spaces that are proper, just bonkers, right? But generally speaking, if you're looking for a bit of political debate, they are good places, and you'll find like-minded people. You'll also find other people, some of them who don't even want to fight and argue with you. They just want to put their point across. So, and that's something that we've spoke about often on them, Basil. Basil, I just want to butt in just now. There's somebody, Leon's just put a comment up. This is obviously a live story, which seems to have come about. There's been a school shooting in Austria with 10 dead. I think once we finish this topic, we'll maybe have a little look into that while we're up on a live. It would kind of make sense.
Yeah,
so
some videos, horrifying.
We're on here. Is this one we have to reflect on their actions when they or their loved ones are in intensive care? I kind of don't know what this one's about. That about the blood? Sorry.
Yeah, so what he's saying there is, right, he's saying Brits defy Boris Johnson and go for one last pint before pubs shut down, right? So this is about COVID, right? And he's saying they may have to reflect on their actions when they or their loved ones are in intensive care, right? Now, everyone's got different opinions on COVID, right? And that's fair enough. You're entitled to your opinions. But the truth of the matter is, what he's basically saying there is, you should be, I'm scaring the public into going for a pint before lockdown starts and saying you should start lockdown early and stay home, right? Now, again, we all know that the COVID lockdowns, regardless of what your opinion on COVID is, were a farce, right? There was rules where it was like, if you sit down, you don't have to wear a mask. If you stand up, you do, right? Or, sorry, does the virus only work above 4'2" or something? Do you know what I mean? It's just a load of rubbish, right? And David Bull was totally in on that. And again, the reason I suspect why he went totally in on it was because he had a TV career and he wanted to be part of that group and the clique and all the rest of it and have the trendy opinions,
Yeah, I think the COVID's a whole, delicate topic in itself, whether it was a thing, whether it wasn't a thing, the lockdowns and stuff. But did you see when you were going having a look about him, or from personal knowledge of the guy, where he stood on the vaccine?
Yeah, he was pro-vaccine. Yeah, I actually put a video up of him and Richard Tice. Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform, was also massively pro-vaccine, right? So the pair of them pushed the vaccines. There was an interview where the two of them spoke. Obviously, David wasn't in Reform at the time. Reform didn't exist in its current format. But Richard Tice obviously was, I believe, it was in the process of getting changed from the Brexit Party into Reform, I think. And they both pushed the vaccines, pushed them very, very strongly. Yeah.
Right, okay. So I think, is that probably, that's it. And then there's a nice little, I can't remember what these called, GIFs or memes. I keep them mixed up, by Charlie, Chairman of Reform, Dr. David Bull, as a puppet. And you've asked who's pulling the strings, and Charlie's came back. Zia still, probably. So that's kind of that. Let me just, bear with me, and I'll get shot of that. Remove that. back to that. I do apologise for the slowness of me hitting the buttons, but I'm still relatively new to these, so please bear with me. The next thing I want to show you is another individual, and it's cut off the last sentence in his tweet here, but this guy, I'll just remove that. So what we've got here is Carol Benjamin, big account, just under 1 million, is that right, on Twitter? Or sorry, 1 million on
YouTube. Just under 1 million, yeah.
It's
known on YouTube as Sargon of Akkad, yeah.
Do you want to go through that, mate?
Yeah, sure. Do you know what? I'll get the full tweet because it's just cutting off the end there. I'll get the full tweet. So Carl said, I see that many are not terribly thrilled with Dr. Bull's new appointment, but fear not. It's clear that his position will only be ceremonial. Zia will continue to be Farage's closest confidant and will make the executive decisions as the power behind the throne. Nothing will have functionally changed, only the outward-facing presentation will be different. It's worth noting that Farage is just running out of allies now. The choice of party chair was probably down to Aaron Banks and David Bull because there simply aren't any other notables around Farage anymore. Who else could he have picked? This is a concerning issue because after 30 years as one of Britain's most successful politicians, Farage is essentially on his own. His closest allies are constantly restrained by Reform's Soviet-esque speech codes out of fear of the media, and there is little that they seem able or willing to do except wait it out for the next election. This doesn't bode well, as it appears that the collapse of the Labour and Conservative parties means that Farage can just patiently arrive in government, but without any actual experience or governing, and devoid of a competent and confident team around him. What is the plan? Who knows? Reform don't look like a government in waiting, and it's because of the internal culture of the party. And what I'll say on that, right, is he's absolutely right, right? He's absolutely 100% right. They are just benefiting from everyone going, well, the rest are terrible, right? And, you know, we can maybe talk about alternatives later, but what he's saying there is that essentially Nigel's got no talent in the background. Now, Nigel himself has said this in an interview before. He was asked, what is his biggest weakness? Which is by the way, you get asked this all the time in life. This is not a trick question. You go for a job interview, they say, what's your biggest weakness? And you always do some playful answer, you know, like, oh, I just work too hard, you know? And really, it's one of those answers that you pick up over time and you have a stock answer that you go to. Well, sure enough, in this instance, Nigel was very honest. And he said, I am terrible at picking a team of people. Now, if there's one thing as a leader you need to have is to go, I'm good at picking a team of people, because you need to recognize your own weaknesses, because nobody's perfect, and say, I am terrible at this, but I'll get good people in who are great at doing that. And Nigel said himself, I'm terrible at picking people. So it's like, come on, you know what I mean? What did we expect? It's disappointing, right? Because as you've said before, Craig, he just had to stay quiet. If he stayed quiet, he would have won the next general election. And right now, as Carl's just said, Sargon of Akkad, he is coasting on the fact that he's hoping none of the other parties get their act together or any other party emerges. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know how long this can go on for, because you look at how many Reform, never mind the chairs, look at how many branches have resigned. Entire branches of Reform have resigned. And it's all because of Zia Youssef. And by the way, I'll put this on the record, right? This is just my belief. I've got no proof of it. But I believe, reading between the lines, that the reason why Zia has been, because Farage said this on stage today, by the way, he said Zia's still going to be involved in policy and management and data and all the rest of it. He said, but David Bull is going to be going round the parties and all that sort of stuff and speaking to the chairs and all that good stuff, right? Okay, so there we go. He's announced that that's the situation. So why is that the situation? Well, it's because ultimately he wants Zia to be the chairman, but the branches are ticked off. And they've said that. You go and read the resignation letters from the branch chairs. Every single one of them mentions Zia Youssef is difficult to work with. He doesn't listen to us, and he keeps getting rid of people we like and appointing his own stooges in the branches. Well, there you go. And that's what they've done. They've turned around and said, right, well, you don't have to deal with Zia anymore. You can deal with this lovely David Bull again, right? Deal with him instead. But really, the power behind the throne, as Carl has said, is Zia Youssef.
Yeah, it's just bonkers, isn't it? It's just becoming, as I said earlier, it's becoming a bit of a soap opera. as you rightly said, I've said it often enough that if they just done nothing for 4 years, they'll win an election. But the fact that they can't, apparently, and it looks as if they can't run a party, you go, well, how are they going to run a country? And my only hope is that, again, the perception of them is they're just not as bad as Tories and Labour, right? So that hopefully they're better. But if that turns out to be not true, where do we go then? The country will be in meltdown.
Well, obviously, the truth of the matter is people have put a lot of hope into reform. And by the way, that hope will not go away because, for instance, right, I'll just pick on, it was Debbie again who mentioned, I'm always slagging reform off, right? The truth of the matter is, right, I want reform to be better. You want reform to be better.
Yeah,
we all want reform
100%.
to be better, right? And Debbie wants reform to be better too. And the only way people get better is by learning from their mistakes, right? And if reform, right, if you're coasting on a high percentage in the polls and you're thinking, we're going to win this easily, you're not really going to change anything, So when you get in office, you're going to turn around and do the policies that you've been talking about. But the truth of the matter is, you've got to criticize people to get them to learn. It's like a child, right? If you just turn around and tell your child their entire life growing up, they're brilliant, you can't do any wrong. Your child turns out to be an horrible thing, you know what I mean, right? Without swearing, right? And you've got to discipline them, you've got to teach them lessons, and parties are no different, right? The people at the top of them are outside, they're in a bubble, right? They're outside of the consciousness of the country. Nigel does it better than most, I'll give you that, right? We've had some terrible leaders in this country, and the Labour and the Tories are shocking, right? As are the SNP in Scotland. But honestly, if reform don't get this right, just think about this, right? People turn around to me and they go, Basil, if you criticise reform, that means it's less likely they'll ever get into government. And if it's less likely they'll get into government, it's more likely we'll get Labour or the Tories. Fair enough. But what about the other way around? What if reform get into government and they're terrible? They're shocking. They make mistake after mistake. They don't run things right. Yeah, they shut the borders, but everything else goes to pot. What's going to happen then? What's going to happen? You're never going to get another reform government again. So now is the time when they should be getting these things right. Nigel Farage should look at all those tweets today, which, by the way, weren't my tweets. All I was doing was putting up what the reform chairman said, right? And going, we need to get some media training going on here. We need to get these things right. We in the past, he got criticised for turning around and saying, what Richard Tice turned and said, we want nothing to do with that lot, referring to Tommy Robinson's fans, right? Who are strong, patriotic, reform potential activists, right? And people criticised him for that. And at that moment, he should have turned and said, we need to get a better answer on this. We need to put forward phrasing that we all know what we're talking about and we all agree on the key points. And they didn't. And this is why you get things like the Stephen Edgerton interview where Nigel Farage turns around and says, I don't even want to deport all the illegal migrants that are here. And you sit there and go, what is going on? This is your bread and butter, It's just it's just wrong. And again, right, it can't be that for the next 4 years, reform get an easy ride. Nigel goes down the pub every weekend and just turns around and goes, isn't it great, everyone? We're going to be in office in a few years. We don't have to do any of it. It's going to be fantastic. Because they're going to get in there day one and the civil service, who are full of lefty idiots, are going to run them ragged. And it's going to be more of the same crap. We need professional people to be in charge in this country. Patriotic professionals who know what they're doing, believe in the cause, and are willing to do anything to get the job done. And unfortunately, right now, I do not see that from reform.
Yeah, aye, that's us, mate. Right, I'm going to go to the questions, and as Basil's been talking, it's great having a guest on because it gives me a chance to get through. I've been throwing up a lot of the comments on screen as we've been talking, and I've been able to push the questions over to one side so I can go through them now. So it's actually great. I don't have the ability to do that when it's just a solo live. So that's the only reason I asked Basil back on. I don't believe a word he says. He's not a great guest. I just thought it was handy for me to get into my questions. I am kidding. Right, now before I start these, I just want to show this. This is Leon, who's put in £4.99 as a, I don't know what that is, a super sticker or something. I don't put my begging bullet on these. What I do, Leon, with that, I do get paid from YouTube because you guys watch adverts, and that's doing all right. It's recently it's been able to support me and let me do more things in my life than go out and try and chase a coin.
Hang on, Craig. Leon doesn't say that $4.99 is necessarily for you. It's me who's been doing all the talk. I'm pretty sure he meant that for me, right? Is that right, Leon? Is that $4.99 for me? Because Craig might not take your $5, but I will.
Aye, just to let you know that and the memberships that I have for the channel, I put them into a wee kitty, and I buy like the camera I'm using, the new laptop when my last one broke. I actually bought 2 laptops since the time that I've been doing this. The lights that are making my face look a wee bit whiter than it should. So I've got microphones and things that I've been able to buy. So it's quite handy and it does go to good use, but I'm not putting the begging bowl out for them. A lot of channels only read out questions when they do that. That's not what you'll get here, but I'm humbled and appreciative of that, Leon. So thanks for that. So questions. Craig, do you think people will wake up and realise reform isn't the answer? Well, here's the madness. I think people will wake up to realise reform are not what reform's perception is. But the madness is, and the maddest thing about British politics is, right now, they probably are the answer. Because the hope is that they'll not be as bad as the Tories were for, 14 years, and as Labour have been over the last 12 months, which is frighteningly how they've managed to run the country and ruin the country in such a short space of time. So, maybe sounds crazy for somebody who is quite vocal about reform, that they probably are still the least worst option out there. And that really, really infuriates me. Question, I smell desperation, I smell Farage derangement syndrome. I see people that don't realise the movement has massively overtaken the party at the top. Policy will come from members very quickly. Unfortunately, I need to disagree with that, Rebecca, because the members in Reform have no way whatsoever of influencing policy. There is no democratic way. My party, SDP, I've seen it from my own eyes. I was at the conference last November, first time I've ever been at a political conference, and I've seen people, number of members from the floor, put in things, take a vote, and it's either in or it's out. You don't have that mechanism with Reform. So unfortunately, the policy will not come from members quickly at all, because there's no mechanism there to do it. A lot of people asked, well, before we came on live, I just asked where everybody's viewing from. So we've got Lancashire. I'm glad you can understand my tones, Jim Bob. Claire asks, I only managed to watch your live chats twice. Can you let me know what time they start, please? Claire, this is the thing with the lives, especially just now, because I've got some stuff on, that I kind of need to deal with. That's, my current live court proceedings against me. So I'd love to be able to say, right, I'm going to do lives every night midweek at 7:30. Right, so I kind of can't do that. I really enjoy doing them, and maybe going forward, that's where we're going to end up. So I don't have set times just now. So if you want to watch them, if you click and you're not already subscribing to the channel, if you then click that you want notifications, as soon as I go live, bang, they'll get them. Until we get to a point where I may do, a couple of days a week during the day ones and another few nights set times. But my life right now, unfortunately, I'm loving doing these. The interaction's great, getting guests on. I'll not stop doing my 10-minute moans though, because some people just prefer them. But as far as interaction, it's quite. See, when you just sit staring at a camera all day, and sometimes you don't go out and you do 3 or 4 videos, it's kind of a boring existence. Whereas these are far more interactive and fun. Okay, so please just bear with me, Claire, and thanks for tuning in. Paranormal channel. Good afternoon. When will this madness end, Craig Houston? Hope all's well with you. Well, my name's Houston, not Huston, right, for a start. Paranormal channel. How do you like them apples, right? When will the madness end? The madness will end, and Basil kind of alluded to this when he was talking there. It's when we get good people in positions of power. It's not, the parties can be good, bad, and indifferent, but if I've got lunatics in the parties, and I'm not saying everybody that's an MP or an MSP up here are lunatics, but the vast majority are. They're positively nuts, and they're positively not even in it for their party or their people. They're in it for themselves, right? There's a good package to be made if you're elected, and you've got, if you get 2 terms, you end up with an absolutely mental bumper pension and things like that, right? So I kind of think there's far too many people in it for that. So when we can get people like me, I'll stand up for election next May for Holyrood, and I would really encourage anybody who's got that in them to go and do the same. And I don't care what colour is you've got on. If you're a good person and you're going to go in there and do a good job and not be an idiot, then all the better. Basil, you should join forces with Rupert Lowe.
Oh, look, if you follow my timeline on Twitter, you'll know I'm a big fan of Rupert Law. And the reason why I'm a big fan of Rupert Law is not necessarily because of his politics, right? I do agree with him on an awful lot of things, right? I'm not going to lie, but I guarantee you there's quite a bit in particularly the economy and stuff like that I don't agree with him on. But as I've said before, this is not the time for those conversations. Right now, we have a country to save. And I love the fact that for so long, people like me who believe that mass immigration, I mean, you could even get me to describe it as a crime what's been done to this country because of how it's been done against the public's will and the need for mass deportations and the issues around Islam and halal slaughter and all that, which I have very, very strong opinions on. And Rupert Law is constantly backing the same things that I have concerns over. So I do tweet out a lot of stuff about Rupert Law. I do support him in everything he does. And by the way, if he's starting a political party up or if he's joining forces with someone or whatever he does next, I'll be very keen to see what happens. And I'll probably still continue to support him because that man was, in my opinion, look, again, politics aside, just what reform tried to do to him. Just trying to get someone arrested because you don't like their politics or whatever. I think it's appalling. And I think people like that should be held to account. And I don't like the way the media kind of moved on from that story in a lot of ways and pretended like, oh, it was no big deal. You know, I see a lot of people saying Hoopert instead of Rupert just to take the mick. And you sit there and go, I'm sorry, do we not want decency in our public office again? You know, I want to go back to a time when, you know, political opponents, and by the way, they weren't meant to be political opponents. Rupert was in reform, right? He was championing reform. He was promoting them. But I want to go back to a time when we didn't try to arrest people we didn't like in politics. And, you know, Craig, it's very paramount with you right now as well.
You can say it, I can't. If you're going to drag me into this conversation, I'll stay out of the conversation. Particularly if you're going to discuss, you know, what's happened to me recently. I've got a time and a place to do that. And,
Craig, all I'll say is this, right? Everyone in this chat, and myself included, knows in the bottom of their gut what happened to Rupert Law was wrong, even if you're a reform supporter, and we all know what happened to you was wrong as well. So there you go.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that. What we've got here, and Humza, right, this is something, I done a live last night with Nick Buckley, who's another YouTuber, and Humza on about another 45 million people is needed all over Europe. He's telling us that number that's needed to take over Europe. What's wrong with people waking up? Right, here's the thing, James, it was worse than that. Because it's not 45 million people. He was saying that, I think it was by 2050. I might be slightly wrong with the date, but it was within that sort of rough idea. We would need, UK and Europe, 45 million workers, not people. Now, if you import 45 million workers, they don't all come just yourself. Majority of them will come with other people. So your minimum is actually 90 million people. And if it's families and a mixture of that, you could be talking about 100 million plus. So, and I kind of never tippled to that until we were on the live last night with Nick. And I thought, well, he's not said we need 45 million people at all. He said we need 45 million workers. So to get to that level, we need loads more people. Zoe, thanks very much. Zoe's one of these names. There's lots of names that I'm recognising from every live that I do, Zoe being one of them. Don't forget COVID PPE face masks. A shop load ended up in the sea. I kind of think there was a lot of things I feel about that sort of stuff, Zoe, but I'm with you on that one. Yvonne, another one. She's a troublemaker, by the way, Basil. See this Yvonne one. Keep her eye. And the Zoe's not much better, to be fair, but Yvonne's up particularly naughty on here sometimes. Have you watched Gaza the Hillbilly Halfwit on the Fabian Society? No, I haven't, but I'll probably go and watch it, Yvonne, if it's worth watching. I have watched plenty of Gaza in my day, but he was a wee guy. He was a football player, played for the Rangers, Newcastle, Spurs, and Lazio, and England. I was in the England end with a Scotland hat and all that on the day 1996 in Wembley when he scored one of the most mental goals I've ever seen. Because he was a Rangers player at the time, but scoring against Scotland, I didn't know whether to cry or celebrate. It was a bit bizarre way to put me through that day. Anyway, I digress. What's this? Yvonne, have you got a star? That's the same thing twice. Right, while I've been asking those ones, there's even more ones came in. So I'm not going to be able to do them all. But I will flick through them, just see if there's any questions. So don't follow me if I don't get to you, because there's 38 more came in since I went through and picked out all the ones that were questions. So if I miss you, it's not because I don't love you, it's just because these are mental and there's too many questions coming in. It's John Moore 7 years ago on YouTube. The ocean is rising, the Royal Navy has a different world map. No, Florida. Wow, that's a bit mental. Craig, important question that no one will answer. What will leaving the ECR mean for us Glaswegians? Not like anyone will give us religious freedom. Well, leaving the ECR, the biggest benefit I see out of that would be we've got a whole industry now based on immigration where we have lawyers, some of them who work in practices, who solely deliver advice to people wanting to beat asylum system. And 99% of the time they turn up at court and they quote the ECHR. We have mental situations where a man was allowed to remain in the country after being found with £250,000 of cash and other things under his bed. And when his time was served in jail, and you would expect that, you know, we'll deport him, it was Albanian, this guy, his lawyer successfully argued that that would be unfair on his son because his son likes the chicken nuggets in the UK and they're different to the ones in Albania. We had another guy, person who, she was from like Trinidad or something, one of the Caribbean islands, and he was from Eastern Europe, and she was to get deported, and they argued that wouldn't be fair on him because he doesn't like spicy food, right? So you got all these mental things. Now that doesn't mean that we have no human rights. It just means we can write our own, and that's kind of, I would prefer that, if I'm perfectly honest with you. So if we bin that and we bin the asylum, I'm trying to remember, Basil, what's the name of the asylum seeking thing that we signed?
The UN Refugee Convention, 19.
The UN Refugee, aye. We bin those two.
And the Human Rights Act. And the Human Rights Act, get rid of that as well.
Aye. And it doesn't mean that we don't look after people. It means that we can write our own that kind of suit the people I keep referring to. Well, people who have got these or qualify for them. So,
Craig, the Human Rights Act was written in 1998. What did we do before that?
Aye, did we not have any? So just want to flick through these. Yvonne, Stirling, well, we'll be staying clear of Stirling. What do you think, Basil? Stay clear of Stirling. Zoe, she's on the moon. Yeah, we kind of fixed that. Just try to see if there's any more questions. There was another 38 messages came in while I was reading the messages that I put aside to read. So I'm just curious and conscious I don't miss any of. You know how the Nats feel about a certain part of Glasgow. James Houston, are we related, James? That would be interesting to figure out. Anyway, yep, there's certainly demographics that the Nats up here tend not to like, and that tends to be demographics who are more aligned to unionism and that sort of stuff. And yeah, we get it. Stinking. Caroline, somebody else actually asked about this. Any news in the Edinburgh Road block? I done a video yesterday. The story was it was a cycle track. It looked to me as if it was like an old disused railway line at one point in a nice residential area in Edinburgh, quite a long track. And it had been closed for 4 days. The police had not told anybody what was going on, and they had like sniffer dogs and all that, and people were starting to get concerned. I have since, and something came up last night, but I have been busy. I had quite an important person to meet today about legal advice. So I've not a chance to follow up the story, but it does appear to be gang related. There's a lot of gang stuff going on in Edinburgh just now, which is a bit scary. And some people are suggesting it's something to do with that. So until I can do more digging, I can't really do much. Look, Caroline's going to go in the naughty step as we know that, right? She just asked that question and then she's put this up. Right, where do I start with that? Man, these people, man. And then there's somebody else. I don't know this character very well, but seems to follow you about a fair bit, Basil.
Yeah, she's migrated over from Twitter. Hi, Hazel. Hope you're well. Yeah, you have missed something kind of important. And to find out what it is, you'll have to rewatch the video when it goes on.
That's what you do. If you don't want to turn up on time, then I'm not going to rewind. Right, so before we pull this to the close, I'm kind of conscious trying to keep it under the hour, the stuff that's going on in Austria and possibly France. Basil, have you had a chance to have a look into that while we've been live?
Yeah, there was. So yeah, I saw it this morning. Actually, there was a deputy head teacher, I think it was, in France. They've implemented a policy of searching bags when students come in. This is the new norm for many countries, and I would argue a lot of it's down to mass migration and the elevation of violence in our cities. While searching one of the pupils' bags, they pulled a knife out and stabbed it to death. I don't know the perpetrator. Obviously, it's a child, so they've not released any information. But yeah, I just think it's another horrible crime that never used to be the case in these countries, not like France and stuff. You never used to have school children knifing teachers to death, and now you do. In Austria, there's been a school shooting, mass shooting, 10 dead as last I saw, which again is a pupil who apparently is dead as well. Don't know the identity, obviously, again, but there'll be speculation online around it. And yeah, I just hope that the problems that we have done, by the way, people have done to us, the leaders of our countries have done this to us by encouraging a lack of discipline in society, by not giving people hopes and aspirations, by not encouraging people to have pride and faith in, their communities and their culture and their religions or their families or whatever. They've taken all that away, and as a result, we have a lot of people who are lost right now, mixed with just an absolute avalanche of mass immigration that has brought unfortunately some of the worst people in the world to our shores and to others as well. And it's a really toxic mix, and it is why we are where we are.
Mm-hmm. No, I kind of get that, but it's heartening to know that the most likely party to win the next election, their new chairman, is all for it and thinks immigration, as recently as today, his words, not mine, immigration is our lifeblood as a country. It's getting more depressing as we speak. So, listen, thanks very much to everybody that joined in, everybody that's watching, and thanks, Basil, for giving us a bit of your time again. There's another one that's popped in. You better not be late, Scotty Dog. Right, you report for duty as required, my friend. Another one that's name pops up in almost everyone that I do. So I do appreciate all the support that the channel's getting, and I'm sure these lives will grow even better and bigger as we go on. So, thanks very much, Basil, for giving us your time again. Thanks very much to everybody that tuned in. And as I say in all my videos, unless you're the type of person, in fact, I normally say before that, if you've not already done so, hit the like button, hit the share, put some comments in. If you've not already done so, hit the subscribe button, it's free. And if you want notified when I put out more videos, click the notification bell and they'll send you a notification straight to you and my lives. And however, most important thing of all, unless you are the type of person who joins a political party that many people are buying into the perception that they are going to do something about immigration, yet you become the chair and want to tell us that immigration is the lifeblood of our country, then not you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.